Today I'm going to show you how to cook ribs that I like to eat. I've got a couple racks of St. Louis cut ribs that I'm going to season, get in the drum pit, some good hickory, some good cherry smoke. There's all kinds of ways to do ribs. I got a bunch of recipes on my channel, but of all of them, this is my absolute favorite way, and I'm calling them Malcom style ribs. First thing I'm gonna do is use a paper towel and pull this membrane off the back. A lot of times the ribs will be fatty and they'll have a little excess fat on them that you want to take off. A little bit of flat meat here. I usually go ahead and knock that off. If there's anything kind of hanging on the edges, it's gonna cook a little bit more done than you want, I'll go ahead and just square it off. Now we're ready to get some seasoning on them. The first thing when I'm eating ribs, I want some savoriness. Salt, pepper, garlic, those are the notes that I think of. All that's in my AP seasoning. Heck, I've even just used salt, pepper, and garlic a little at a time. But I'm just gonna go, nice light coat on the backside, flip them over. Same thing on the meat side. I just want that salt, pepper, and garlic to come through. And I like to let them set about 15 minutes before I apply any other seasoning to them. So while the ribs are over there hanging out, I'm gonna go ahead and get my drum fired up. I'm starting with the fire basket outside of the drum, filling it up with some Royal Oak lump charcoal, and I cover half of the basket up for aluminum foil. I'm gonna drop in a couple tumbleweed fire starters and then put the basket down inside the drum and fire it up. I'm keeping it simple, man. I go back to my old trusty The Barbecue rub, and I'm not going super heavy with it. I want those flavors, some of the sugar, some of the peppers, the paprika, the chili powder, all that to come through in these ribs. And while the drum finishes coming up, the ribs are just gonna sit here out in the air, still working on it, still pulling some moisture out of the meat, and they're gonna be ready for that pit just in about 15 minutes. All right, the fire is right where I want it. So I'm gonna drop a piece of cherry, piece of hickory smoker wood in. Also, gonna drop about half a sweet onion in there. I love the way it smells. So the grill's setting at 275. That's right where I want it. I wanna get these ribs on the rack, kind of bunch them up a little bit because they're gonna cook just how we put them on here. Every 30 minutes, I'm gonna come out and spin this rack so the one slab of ribs is always over that safe zone. I still get the fat dripping down, giving me that authentic pit flavor on one side, but it lets them cook even. So we've been on 1 hour. It's time to give them another twist, and you can see we're starting to dry out a little bit. That's when you want to start spritzing them. So I rotated them around, and I'm going to spritz them just with plain water just because I want some moisture. Now you can see these ribs, the rub is really cooked on them. They've got a beautiful color. That's what you want them to look like when it's time to wrap them. The only thing that I'm gonna put in the wrap on my ribs is some vinegar sauce. I'm skipping all the sugar, the butter, all the extra stuff because I just really want it to have that little acidity note. I'll lay the ribs, meat down in it. On the back side, I'm not doing anything. I'm just gonna wrap them up at this point, and you wanna leave them to where you can get back in them. So bring the foil over. You wanna do 2 layers, and then just fold the ends. Our ribs have been in the foil for about an hour. Now I want to check them and look for doneness. And what I want to see is some disintegration. I want that membrane to be cooked through. Just like this, you know they're getting there, but I also want to feel them with my thermopin. So I'm going in, I'm wanting them to hit about 202. We're there. Rest these ribs for just a few minutes, show you how I like to glaze them. I'm going to transfer them over to our full rack. Just want to kind of let them drain off. You can still pick them up. They're firm enough. Now look how good these ribs look. The sauces I'm gonna use is a 50-50 blend of my vinegar and barbecue sauce. I'm just gonna eyeball it, probably about 3/4 cup of each. Use a little basting brush to kind of stir it up. And then I wanna put a light coat on top of our ribs here. And now they get just a little more dry rub on top, creates that muddy texture. Just setting them right back on the drum. And at this point, we just need about 15 minutes. Get the lid closed. I'm gonna be ready to eat some ribs. These sakes, I know they're gonna be good. How could they be bad? Look at them. What I'm gonna do is flip them over. Makes it easier to cut. Just use my knife, kind of go right down them. Easy cutting ribs. I mean, just look at that rib. That is beautiful. Smoke ring, it's juicy, packed full of flavor, muddy on top, not overly seasoned, not overly sauced. Now the moment of truth. Melts in your mouth.